Hello and welcome to another Trades and Tutorials video from a Little Big View at MarketGauge.com. This is Jeff Bish, president of MarketGauge.com. And if you are watching this on YouTube, then you should know you can also find this video at MarketGauge.com, where you'll find a whole host of other resources, which I'll get to in a minute. First of all, the point of this video is to highlight the major potential breakout we're looking at in the home builders. Now you're looking at a weekly chart right now on ITB, which is a home builders ETF. And the reason I'm highlighting it is simply because this could either be a triple top, right? Or it could be a pretty significant breakout. And I tend to favor the third time up as being a bias towards a breakout. Now, even if you did some basic measures, a $6 range that breaks out, it's reasonable to expect it to move $6. $6 on a $26 price tag is nearly 25%. So that's a pretty nice move. It also brings you up to around 32, which lines up pretty nicely in terms of a technical place for resistance. Now, I don't think this is going to happen in 2 days, and so for that reason, I'm hoping I'm bringing this to you a little bit early. And I'll show you why when we get to the daily charts. But before we get to that, let's take a look at how I even came across this. Because, as I said before, if you were looking at the videos last week, then you would have seen a video that highlighted the sector summary part of Little Big View. Now, in that video, which I think came out on the 7th, I focused on the fact that in the sector summary view, which is sector summary, you find this under resources. If you click on resources, you'll see Little Big View. So that's how I got here. And focus on the fact that the year-to-date column, a new column we put in for the beginning of the year, makes it really easy to figure out which sectors are leading the market right from the beginning. Now, in this particular year, this is particularly interesting because the markets themselves have been weak. They have not recovered to their new highs from December, but some sectors have. So there's two things going on. In this particular video, I'm going to focus on one particular interesting ETF, but the other thing you should know is that as the markets try to determine whether they want to go up or down, you really want to keep an eye on how many sectors in this column are up year to date versus down year to date. I'll give you a good sense of the market breadth and the leadership. If there is any leadership, is the leadership falling or getting weaker? You can see it all right here. And another pattern to point out is that this table is sorted by 6-month change. So you're going to see the strongest over the last 6 months at the top. Now you'll notice that the strongest over the last 6 months are also the ones that are up so far for the year, with the exception of XHB, which brings me to the home builders, right? So if you saw that video last week, you're probably already on top of this, but I've extended it here to the ITB, which we'll get to in just a second. So XHB over the last week or so has risen through the ranks or come from down on the year to up on the year. It's been incredibly strong over the last 3 months, so not surprising and not too shabby over the last 6 months. It's also got a bullish phase, which I won't go into in this video, but you can learn all about it in the help if you do the tutorials on phases. And also, if you ever have the opportunity to catch Mish in a webinar, typically you can learn a ton about how to trade phases in those webinars as well. So watch out for Mish at a webinar, and you'll learn more about the phases. So for right now, as I've said, if I'm keeping track of the sectors, XHB now jumps right out at me, jumps out at me at the latter part of last week. So I want to go take a look at the home builders. Now this particular list of ETFs is intended to give you a good solid overview of all the different areas of the economy from a sector point of view. There's a more extensive list, I know. In fact, we track more of them in our ETF monitor product, but this gets you started. And so if I get started here at XHB, let's take a look at the charts. Now you see ITB, we'll be back to that in just a second. XHB also looks quite good. Looks like it's breaking out nicely, and it too has a really well-defined range that it's breaking out of, 27 to 34, about a $7 range on a $34 start. That's a nice, again, breakout. $7 puts us up around 41, which run into a little resistance, pretty major resistance actually, around 40, but it's got some room to run. All right, so they both look similar, but they're not exactly the same. As you'll see when we look at ITB, ITB did not make a significant high here in the beginning of 2014, so it's got more of a straight line breakout. I think they both look good, but they both have different compositions of their stock. So I would look at both. Whenever I look at XHB, I always want to look at ITB, and I'll show you why in just a second. So how am I going to look at it, and why do I think we're actually early? Now, if the breakout just continues to run, yes, we missed it. If you were on top of this last week, which could have been, then maybe you are already in, and I would say that was obviously a good move. But let's go to the daily chart. I don't necessarily think that you have to have already missed it, however, and this is why. If we look at a good zone for this thing to retrace back to, we've got some really good support, and the support comes in this zone, as I would put it. So the zone, I'm drawing the zone because I'm looking at the breakout level here, I'm looking at the breakout level here, and I'm looking at the 10-day moving average here. And so any pullback, and we could look at this level here, any pullback into this level with then a good pattern to indicate the pullback is over, or the pullback is ready to resume, or the pullback's paused, or it puts in a good level to trade off of. Maybe an inside day, if you've seen any of our webinars that have to do with that, or some slingshot patterns. This is an ideal candidate to just keep your eyes open for a pullback. And the reason I'm looking for a pullback is because I want to have a good place to put my stop. So XHB looks great for that type of opportunity. And that brings us to ITB. Right, so I've got the same zones drawn here on the daily chart. They're based on where the major breakouts or support levels have been on the daily chart or weekly chart. And so you can see the high one is right here, the lower one is right down in here, and the 10-day moving average is down in here. So again, looking for some kind of a pullback so I can establish a position with a good stop. And I like the potential of such a clean breakout, but the truth is either one of them could run. All right, and so I watch them both, and it'd be better if they both go. So in conclusion, I'm sure one of the questions that will pop up would be, well, what's really the difference between the two? So there is a quick and easy way to find that out, and so I did that ahead of time. Went to Yahoo. I do the holdings on the ETF, and right now we're looking at XHB, and this does not require a lot of analysis. The things that I look for is there a concentration of particular stocks in the ETF that I should be paying attention to, and in a lot of cases, what are the stocks? So they both say they're Homebuilder ETFs, but the first symbol that comes up on this is Lumber Liquidators. The second one is Aaron's, and now finally you get to Toll Brothers. But the other thing to consider here is that look at the top 10. The top 10 are all 3%. So you don't have any one or two that are really overweighting the particular index. What you do have here is a list of stocks, and in fact it'll tell you here, top 10 holdings 32%. You have a list of stocks that represents both companies that are going to benefit from homes being built and companies that are actually building the homes. Now, that is distinctly different than ITB. If you look at ITB, you will see that, first of all, the top 10 holdings is 61%, but what's more interesting to me is that if you look at the top 4 holdings, and I'm only picking 4 because I'm kind of looking at where the biggest, if you have any big percentage holders, I could actually go down to 5. But if I look at the top 4, that represents 10, 20, 30, 37% of the ETF's move. That's more than the top 10 in the other one. Now that said, those top 4, however, are in fact home builders: D.H. Horton, Lennar, Pulte Group, and Toll Brothers. Now the next thing I would do, because if I'm just looking for ideas, and I'll trade the stocks as well, is I'd go look to see if any of these, even this one, have really good looking patterns, because maybe I prefer to trade the stock versus the ETF. But we'll do that in a different video. My point here is really home builders. This is not a breakout that I'm suggesting you watch for the next couple days. This is a potential breakout that could be weeks, maybe even months. Worth watching. You got 2 different ways to watch it. There are 2 different ways to watch it. And you can do the same thing with other ETFs by simply keeping an eye on the sector summary page. So there's a couple of other ETFs in here you can see that are worth looking into. But as I said, bringing this to your attention because XHBs kind of popped up into the lead last week. And unless you're really paying attention to it, with all the attention on oil and other areas right now, you may not have seen this coming. It's not over. In fact, it may just be beginning. So hope that helps, and I'll see you in the next video.